Okay.
Actually, before we do that, I do have an introduction. This book has a lot of fake swear words. So I thought, why not write my own fake swear words? You sloppy so-and-so. That was good. Ooh, burn. You underwear face.
There
That
we
one
go.
sounds like it would actually come from that one.
Yeah, it does.
Googie rump.
Oh, that's the best one.
Kunk funkerbo.
That one is really
Funkerbo.
good. If you say that too fast, you might actually swear.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Your Favorite Book podcast. I'm Mallory.
I'm Annie.
I'm Tanner.
We're siblings.
We like reading books.
And on this week, number one, Annie's joining us
Yay.
again because we have read The Scorch Trials by James Dashner.
Book 2
Boo!
of The Maze Runner. Is there a name for the trilogy?
I think it's called The Maze
Probably
Runner.
the Maze Runner.
Okay. The Maze Runner trilogy. This book, wow, is the worst book I've ever read.
Can we all give a
Easily.
facial expression to how we feel about it?
That'll be good for the thumbnail.
Ready? That's how we felt the whole time.
Ugh, it was so bad.
Yeah.
If you liked this book, I recommend clicking off the video now.
Yeah. We are going to hurt your feelings
Yes.
very badly. But actually, don't click away yet. Let's give you some book recommendations of things that like the Maze Runner does or wants to be, but these books do so much better.
The whole Locked Tomb trilogy.
Yes. If you love a mysterious world, then read the Locked Tomb trilogy. It's got better characters, a way more interesting world, actually complex narrative.
More satisfying solutions to the mysteries that last throughout the whole book instead of just at the end of book 3.
Yes.
See, also, I would recommend Red Rising.
Yes, because this is a book about leadership. At least the Maze Runner pretends to be a book about leadership.
It's trying.
Tries its very hardest.
Just like Thomas.
Yes. And I would also recommend a webcomic / anime called The Tower of God, which is very mysterious. The plot is amazing. Tons of characters that you care about that are actually interesting and don't have amnesia. So there you go. Now, if you love the Scorch Trials and you don't want to hear us lambast this piece of garbage, then go ahead and click away now. Do your
Thanks
research.
for joining us.
Read these other books and come back and then you'll say, you know what, you were right. This
Yeah.
book is horrible.
Yeah. Well,
So who told us to read this?
Me.
Annie. This is not one of your favorite books, to be fair.
No, I hadn't read it before. I've watched all the movies and I really love the movies. Not because they're really good, but because they're fun. And I made them read the Maze Runner reread. And then we were like, hey, let's
And
do
it wasn't
the next
that
one.
horrible. You
Maze
know?
Runner was fine. It was like
neutral.
good
You could tell that he cared
Average
a bit
middle
more
grade
about making a good
or
story.
whatever.
Yeah, it feels
middle,
middle grade.
whatever.
Yeah.
But this book, I had read the first chapter after I finished reading The Maze Runner, and I had to stop and put it away forever because it was so bad.
Wow.
So poorly written that I couldn't even, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read this whole series when I was in middle school. It was while the movies were coming out. It was right after the Hunger Games. I think it was after the Hunger Games. I could be wrong on that. But I was on a big dystopian YA trilogy trend, as was most of the middle grade YA readers and writers at that time. I remember really liking the first book a lot, and I was kind of losing interest by the second book, but I finished the whole series and started
Wow.
reading the prequels.
You are
It's
brave.
impressive.
And the prequels broke the
You deserve a
world.
medal.
The prequels broke the world that he created in the other 3 books,
'Cause
which
he
I don't know
doesn't
how
know
you
what
did
he's
that.
doing.
No.
But when we reread it, boy oh boy, I don't even know how I read it the first time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's so
Even
bad.
as
It
a
could have just
child.
been a special interest that you latched onto.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you're younger,
and they're
you-
pretty short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're fast read, even though
Yeah.
it feels like you've been reading for 12 years.
This one
Yeah.
felt so much
Even
longer
though-
than The Maze Runner.
You know what happens in the book? Nothing.
Nothing happens.
They walk
Nothing.
through the
The desert.
desert.
Yeah. So that's a good segue. We should talk about what this book is about. So in The Maze Runner, it's all in the title, basically. It's about these kids in a post-apocalyptic setting. It's a big cast of characters. They're surviving in this dangerous maze. There are these monsters called the Grievers that are like these gigantic metallic spider bug things.
Yep.
They're pretty creepy, but they don't have any rules, so they're like shallow. They're interesting on the surface, which is like this entire series to a T.
Yeah.
The kids escape the maze. The maze kind of solves itself, which is very convenient. But there's at least a bit more plot in that book than in the Scorch Trials. And the Scorch Trials is basically a copy-paste of the Maze Runner. The kids have escaped the maze at the end of book 1, and they wake up in this room. A lot of the scenes transition that way, where it's like the kids go to sleep.
Oh my gosh, the amount of chapters that start with Thomas wakes up to either bright light or darkness.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Almost every
because
chapter.
It's easier to write. And the Maze Runner, the Scorch Trial starts out the exact same way, where these kids wake up in this office building, which is an objectively less interesting setting than waking up in this glade and it's a gigantic maze and you can see it in your mind's eye. Here it's like the kids wake up in an office building.
I couldn't picture where they were the entire book.
No.
Because he's so bad at describing places.
He doesn't describe anything.
He over-describes the women because he sexualizes them and it's creepy.
Yeah, I can see both Brenda and Teresa are just like different shades of the same symmetrical face.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how descriptive
They're
he is.
pretty and clean somehow.
And their breath doesn't stink.
Yes! After they just ate canned beans.
Teresa has, Brenda has pleasant breath that didn't smell like anything,
That
but
had
still
a
smelled
non-scent.
good.
Had a
That's the
non-scent.
actual word he used.
Yes.
So bad.
Well, we're
Anyway.
obviously in a tailspin because
Anyway.
there is so much bad stuff in this book. You could go through scene by scene of this book and like have a 12-hour podcast.
We could start a new podcast.
Yeah,
Just
because
about
there-
Scorch Trials.
And we are going to miss so many things that we'll finish like an hour after this podcast and be like, oh, why didn't I mention that?
Yeah.
That is so horrible. It's objectively bad storytelling and writing.
Yeah.
But the basic premise of the Scorch Trials is that it's just an extension of the Maze Runner, where Wicked, the group, oh my god, the name of the group of the bad guys is so stupid.
It's so
Wicked, the government in this post-apocalyptic society, is testing these kids
For
to
some reason.
save the world. And Thomas, he gets these hints in these dream hyphen memories where he is like in a lab with Wicked and Teresa, and they're telling him like, you and Teresa are going to save the world or whatever. But he just keeps on hinting at things that might happen.
And the dreams are all kind of exactly the same.
Yes.
And don't give you any more context for what's happening. But he's older every time.
Yes.
Younger.
He's
No,
it's younger
he
and then
ages
to
throughout
older.
the memories.
Oh,
In the
sorry. I
dreams.
thought you meant in his memories he's older. I was like,
no, sorry.
With each consecutive memory, he grows older.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So in the
That's what I
Scorch
meant to
Trials,
say.
they wake up in this office building, and then some member from Wicked says, "The Scorch Trials are beginning. You have to walk from point A to point B across this desert, and if you survive, then you'll get the cure for this thing called the flare."
Which you all have.
Yes, and
It's
the,
also weird.
it's weird because how did that happen? When did they get the flare? They never describe that.
Yeah.
Also, what happens when you
Do
get the
flare.
flare? Like
Apparently
the characters
nothing.
feel exactly
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
And they never change throughout the story, even
Nope.
though they've been infected with this zombie virus.
Yeah. Like, even as you start reading the book and you think, oh, I'll get some context clues, or I'll get to witness the flare in action. You don't. You just get one character who's like, I thought I could bite my finger. I must be sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to
And
be
you're
like a weird
what?
comic relief thing, but it's not funny. It's
No.
just
It's just
cringy.
confusing, too.
The reason Thomas isn't funny, which is a thing he says in the book, is because James Dashner is not funny and doesn't know how to
Yeah.
write a funny character.
And Thomas is a self-insert.
Yes.
So that's... oh my god, I didn't even think about that. That is so cringy.
Ugh.
The humor is like Rugrat humor, but at least Rugrats is funny because all the characters are babies.
Yes.
Here the characters are ostensibly prodigy children.
And they're supposed to be in a traumatic, horrible, awful experience.
But
they
they
can't remember anything.
Yeah.
But they keep talking like teenage boys.
I can't handle it.
So it's
And it's
kind
not
of a...
consistent either.
No.
Like, the amount of times he replaces crap with clunk, but he also says crap more than he
And
says
he
clunk.
also says freak a lot. He says freak and
yeah,
freaking, too.
and
Yeah.
idiot instead of like shank. Like,
Every time he does, I'm like, oh, you missed one.
You missed it.
one. You missed one.
It's really annoying. We talked about it in the first book, but
It's
if
worse
you're
in
going
this
to
one.
come up with vernacular to like establish that we are in a secondary world, which can be effective and cool. A lot of great authors do that.
Yeah.
High epic fantasy authors do that a lot
Yeah.
too, because their books are so big, but they usually only have one, maybe two brand new words.
Yeah, and it's usually like a replacement for hell or God.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. They'll
things
say
that, like-
to the 9 heavens. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Like
And it's
kind
like,
of
it's a little
religious-y
cringy.
aspects, spiritual aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which make it make more sense in the story, but this one's just he replaced the first word of a swear word. First
Yeah.
letter of a swear word.
And he has several.
Yeah.
And they don't
And it's not
sound
consi-
good.
it's not
and
consistent.
they pull you out of the story
Yeah.
so abruptly, it feels like you got smacked in the face.
Yeah. So this is basically a survival / post-apocalyptic story with zombies.
Yes.
Which feels completely different from the first book.
Yes.
Even though in the beginning of the Scorch Trials, someone from Wicked shows up, a guy in a white suit, and they call him the Rat Man because he looks like a rat. Like everything in this book, even for a small secondary character, he like can't bother to think up of a name for this character. They show up one time in the book to say, "You kids, you're still in the maze." Except this time, there's no maze, and it's an objectively least interesting
Yeah.
setting.
Yeah.
Because
you're-
the only thing they tell him is you have 2 weeks, I think,
Yeah.
to walk 100 miles north.
Something like that.
That's it. You survive.
That's
you can
the
do
plot.
anything you want. Just survive.
yeah. And then we'll
And then
cure
the
you
book
from
doesn't
this
even
misery.
take 2 weeks. Like, he very specifically says, like, the days that happened in the book. Like, he's not, Thomas isn't passed out for a couple days. It doesn't ever say we were walking for like 2 days straight and then it's days later. And then all of a sudden it's 2 weeks and the deadline's almost up.
Yeah.
It didn't match up in my head.
It's almost like the first act of this book, before Thomas and the group and the other Gladers meet some survivors in this city, Brenda and George, Jorge. That happens chronologically. It's like day 1, day 2, day 3. And then after that moment, it's like all these things happen and time passes really quickly,
Yeah.
and then they're at the end of their journey.
And nothing has still happened.
Yeah.
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 We don't
And
learn
no
anything
one got
new.
injured badly.
None of the important main characters.
But
It's
when,
always conveniently just like some random 14-year-old that Thomas never knew, and he's like,
Yeah.
thank goodness,
Like, oh, I
otherwise
didn't
I'd be
even know his
really
name.
sad.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
And they,
bad.
like, at one point, Teresa has a weapon. And it has this, it's a spear. But she only ever uses the end side without the knife on it.
To hit Thomas.
To hit Thomas, even though she says, I will cut you.
Yes.
And then she's like, bam, bam.
Smack him in the head. Like,
Oh,
girl.
I'm so mean.
we will get to that.
Yeah.
Like we said, like there's so much bad stuff in this book.
That doesn't
it's-
make sense.
It's impossible not to like latch on to something that comes to you like out of the blue where
Yeah.
it's like, wait, that was so
Yeah.
insane. I can't
Yeah.
believe that happened. Like
Yeah.
this is a traditionally, okay, I'm going to say this. To people who are writing, who feel imposter syndrome, this is a traditionally published book. Who knows what Dashner's advance was? I don't know what the deal he signed was, if it was a trilogy or if it was just Maze Runner Book 1, and then it blew up, and they're like, quickly get out a second book. This is a traditionally published book. It is some of the worst writing I have ever read.
And it feels like a first draft.
The story makes no sense, and there are 3 movies based off of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they
So-
changed the movies completely because the book is so bad.
Yes.
Yes.
So people who are struggling with imposter syndrome,
Just read,
the
this.
bar is pretty low.
Yeah.
Okay? And success should not be an indicator of quality.
No, it shouldn't. Can we read some of our favorite quotes, word for word, from the book that were absolutely miserable?
Oh, yes, please.
Yes,
We've never done this
please.
before on the podcast because
But we
sometimes it
had
can be
to.
kind of boring, but we can't help
I'm
ourselves.
sorry, you guys. It's so bad.
This is like people watching a Neil Breen movie and the dialogue doesn't make any sense. It's almost reaching towards Breen qualities.
Yeah, it's
of
very,
dialogue.
very, very poor. I'm gonna start with the best worst ones. Here's one of the best worst ones. Doing his best acting job, he smiled at Teresa.
Good job, Thomas.
It just like flows. That
It's
sentence
so
is beautiful.
great. So great. Looks like you had more fun here, hanging with your love goddess. That's such something a 14-year-old boy would say after being in a traumatic experience, almost getting killed by lightning and eaten by zombies.
And his best friend was gone for who knows
Missing.
how many days.
Yes.
Thomas thought hard for 2 whole seconds.
Literally 2 seconds
That's the
of
only
time.
2 seconds he thought in the whole book, you guys. I'm pretty sure. Canonically. And my favorite one, which shows just how sexist this writer is, This is after he describes a super strong guy with a gun and a buzz cut, and he's like really
crew
tough.
cut.
A crew cut.
Which he remembers through his amnesia.
And he says, her shirt, talking about a woman, the woman partner of the cool guy. Her shirt was cut so low that Thomas had to force himself to keep his eyes focused on hers. These are word for word, you guys. Word for word.
You can't blame Thomas for being voyeuristic, because breasts are magnetic to the male gaze.
Especially when you're dehydrated and dying and the woman has your salvation in her hands.
And they have weapons and a gun pointing at you.
Yeah.
It's only natural.
Yes.
It's only
just
human
a
natural.
Man, a boy man.
I think
Whatever
the
he's
phrase
supposed
that
to be.
perfectly encapsulates this entire series is the one that the book ends with, which is, wicked is good. It's as deep, like the entire book is as deep as that phrase. It's as non-interesting.
And non-specific.
Non-specific and not clever.
Yeah.
Like, it's got the veneer of being clever, but it's just all style and no substance.
Yep.
And even as a vessel for entertainment, this book is hollow.
Yeah.
It's not even interesting to read, like,
No.
outside of it being like this grand world-building mystery of like, who's wicked? What are they doing with these kids?
Yeah.
It's what drives me crazy about writers who believe in this style of storytelling called mystery box storytelling. Something J.J. Abrams has talked about. And it's part of why the new Star Wars trilogies are so bad, because they don't have an end goal in mind. Part of what makes being a writer so hard is that you're juggling all these different plates, right? Spinning all these plates. You've got to handle character arcs properly. You've got to handle plot properly. And if you're a world builder, if you're doing sci-fi fantasy, you have to build an interesting world. And if you're going to establish a mystery, you need a satisfying answer.
Yeah.
Dashner has done none of the homework.
He looks at the plates on the floor and goes, how come no one spun these for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got like one plate spinning poorly, and the other plate he's just stuck a pineapple on top and leaned it against the wall.
Smashed on the ground.
And then with the last stick, he's just hitting the audience members over the head with it.
Get it! Why don't you get it? Why don't you get
This
it?
is interesting.
Yeah, he does not trust his audience one single bit.
No. Even, like, it's funny, there was one line that I took a screenshot of. It was at the beginning of the book when Minho, he says something like, Thomas asks a question, like, why are they doing this to us? He spends most of the book feeling confused and asking
Yes.
questions and never seeking out answers. And Minho says, God, you're never going to get a satisfying answer. And to me, it felt like an interesting bit of, like, not even foreshadowing. Like, you could use that as an excuse for foreshadowing. But really, I think James Dashner is just self-conscious about writing a bad book.
Yeah.
And using that as a justification for never giving you a satisfying answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Because
stupid.
the plot just strings you along from mystery after vaguely interesting mystery.
Yeah.
And it never answers any of your questions.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning, you mentioned before the podcast, Mallory, that the boys wake up in this office building and then there's like these dead bodies hanging around the ceilings. Right?
Yeah.
And it's gross. It's,
And it's-
really disgusting.
It's
Yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah.
They're like rotted and bloating. It's so
They can
nasty.
smell it. They're all like most of the boys are puking because it's so
Putrid.
gruesome. Yeah, and the boys are like, smells like cook's armpits in here.
He can't help himself. He thinks that's so funny. And maybe there's like a small percentage of the population that finds that hilarious.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not me.
But
It's
where
not
is that
any
audience?
Small.
Yeah. Also,
It's just annoying.
and then they're like, yeah, I'm still so hungry.
The amount of times that they're hungry, even though they have food almost the entire journey.
Yes.
Even if it's just like a granola bar and an apple, you still, like, you wouldn't be crawling towards the floor 3 days after eating a granola bar and an apple for all 3 meals.
And having no water for days.
Yeah.
And also
Yeah.
not sleeping well. Like,
And it's so hot, you need to put your bed sheet over your head, and then your bed sheet gets flown away, and so conveniently it's not that hot anymore.
that's how you survive in the desert. Just don't sleep with any blankets.
Yeah. The amount of times that things happen conveniently to fix the thing that they lost, like it not being hot anymore because the wind blew away their
Yes.
bed sheets.
Or I'm hungry and then someone shows up with apples.
Yeah, or like, yeah,
It happens again and again. The plot
Because he
conveniently
can't
solves itself.
have a smart solution to giving his characters more issues.
Yes.
Like, the characters have problems, which is a good start, but then he doesn't ever make them solve them. because all the characters are incredibly passive.
Yeah.
Everyone. And it's really bad with Thomas.
The main character.
Yes.
And it's hard to write a smart character when the writer isn't smart.
Yep.
I'm sorry!
Yeah. No, okay, here's another book recommendation. Okay, if you want to read a book about smart prodigy children, read Ender's Game.
Yeah.
Ender is a super active character. It's also a book about leadership. He's an underdog, and he assumes... and he takes leadership over these kids by leading by example. It's really well done. It's simple and effective. Something like the Scorch Trials, like the obstacles write themselves. They're hungry. How do they find food? But the hard work comes from how do they find food?
Yeah.
It's
and
really
the
easy.
interesting parts of reading.
Yes, and that's it's probably just more simple on its surface because you like kind of have to do some research of like, well, how would you find food in a post-apocalyptic desert?
Yeah.
I'm going to think this through, come up with an interesting solution. Nope.
Here's a wanderer who has a whole bunch of apples for him.
Well, in that first scene, the kids are like, they're waking up in this office building, they see all these dead bodies, and then the dead bodies disappear, and they say, that was just a hallucination. We have plants in your brains. We can play with your mind.
Nothing is real, but some things might be real, but don't trust anything.
Yeah, and even in this first, like, few chapters, he describes how the kids waited around for, like, days, locked in this office building, no food, no water. They have water in, like, a bathroom.
sink.
And they just hang out. Like,
And
most of the
sleep.
scenes of this book, the kids are just hanging out doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not trying to, like, smack the walls down to get out or something. Like,
These guys are supposed to be geniuses. They don't feel smart.
No.
no, they don't,
No.
because they're not.
No. And then they finally get food. And I remember thinking when I started reading this, I was like, oh, is he going to do something clever where it's like the boys are so hungry, they just start eating, but it was a test. And the food they were eating makes them sick.
Yeah.
Nope. They just got food.
Yeah.
And the rat man tells them, look out because we're going to keep toying with your mind with these hallucinations.
And then they
And
don't.
then they don't.
And then
Everything
it
is
never
real.
happens again.
Yeah.
And if it's not real, Thomas doesn't even think, like, oh, maybe this isn't real. Never once does he think that.
No.
Because he's an idiot. And also, can we talk about the tattoos that say, like, their roles?
role.
Yes.
First of all, some of them have full names, but some of them don't.
You should
And it's-
describe when they get the tattoos.
Oh, right. It's like one of the days that they're stuck in the office building in the very beginning. And
They're looking for Teresa.
they're looking for Teresa. They find the room she was supposed to be in. It has her name on it. Teresa Agnes, her whole name. And then it says the betrayer underneath her room plaque thing. They open the door. Teresa isn't in there. It's the
Some
character
little
named
boy.
Eris.
Yeah.
And then they're talking to him, whatever. And then someone notices someone have like a tattoo on
Eris
like
has
the
a
neck.
tattoo.
And they're like, what is that? And he's like, I don't know, I don't have a tattoo. And then everyone suddenly has a tattoo that says, like, their name or, like, just Group A. Some of them don't have full names, which, like, makes sense, I guess. But even Thomas, who's the main character, doesn't have his full name.
It's just...
It's
Thomas.
it just says to be killed by Group B.
Yeah.
I don't think it even says his name at all.
No.
Mino
Oh,
says
yeah.
his first name, not his last name. Newt doesn't say what his says. Oh, it says he's the glue. But, like, Eris and Teresa both have their full names. He couldn't even think of full last names for these main
Even
characters.
though they're all named after real people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could just call him...
Thomas
Thomas
Edison.
Edison. Like, what the heck? And then Teresa says the betrayer, and then Thomas is like, nah. And
That'll
then,
never happen.
spoiler alert, Teresa betrays him. And he's like, oh,
She's coming.
oh my gosh, no! Like, you can't even make a surprise happen
Yeah.
when you've said
And,
the
like-
surprise is gonna
Yes.
happen.
But then at the same time,
He tells you the
Thomas
twist at
says-
the beginning of
yeah,
the story.
and Thomas says to be killed by Group B. And he meets Group B. He's like, guess how I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
But then he's
There's-
like, hey, don't. And they're like, okay.
Yes. Oh my god. There's so much
weak.
dumb stuff in this book. So we should explain the Group A and the Group B thing.
Right.
Yes.
The boys wake up in this room and Teresa is gone. And so part of the plot is Thomas looking for Teresa, even though he doesn't really look very hard. And when
No.
he finds her, he
just
runs
hopes
away.
that she shows up.
Which is a whole other scene. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There apparently were two groups that the group
separate
Wicked was testing
mazes.
on. And Wicked is an acronym, I don't know if we mentioned that. It
It's-
stands for...
World in Catastrophe, Kill Zone,
Experiment Department.
Yes.
Experiment? No.
It's
what
something
it doesn't
else.
matter. Environmental department. It stands for something. It's like
Bad.
It's like the name of an evil government that Professor Doofenshmirtz would give.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, it feels like a kid's
There's
cartoon.
not even any like.
But it tries to take itself so seriously.
bad.
But it's stupid.
Yeah.
Like the plot of this book could be like exactly the same as those like insane video game freemium mobile commercials. You know those? Like it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two groups.
Yes, there's two groups. There's one group, Group A, which was all the boys, right?
Thomas's group.
Thomas and his group, and then one girl showed up, Teresa. And then Group B is the exact opposite, but the ratio to, not the exact opposite, the ratio to guys and girls is flipped.
Yeah.
And so Teresa is gone and they find Eris, and we assume that Teresa is with the girls, and both groups are racing towards the end of the
safe
Scorch
zone.
Trials, the safe zone, at the same time. So
Yeah.
on its surface, we have a plot, we have a goal. Thomas loves Teresa. He wants to go find Teresa.
Yeah.
There are ticking clock elements.
Yeah.
Like, you have the flare. If you don't get there in 2 weeks, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Because we have the cure at the end.
I will also say they never explicitly say if it's a race against the two or if everybody has to make it.
No.
They don't even say that. Like the Rat Man should have said, "It's you against Group B. You better start running."
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
they just are like, "Is it all of us? Is it half of us?
We don't know.
Let's not decide. Just keep going."
It would be more interesting if it was Group A versus Group B.
Yeah, and it was a race. Like, if you don't get there
Yes.
first, you don't get the cure.
Yeah.
Also, you should have established at the beginning, like, this is what happens if you fail at the test, you die. And, like, they're hanging out in the office building and one of the boys dies. They're like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah.
There's also this, like, supposed prophecy that Thomas keeps discovering about from his dream/memories,
Which are poorly written.
which are poorly written, and he explains the same thing over and over and over again, where it's like, they have to find the variables, they have to find the patterns. Also, James Dashner likes to capitalize everything in his book, once again, to push, like, this is mysterious. Candidates, it's not just candidates with lowercase c.
Yeah.
Thomas could sense
Thomas
the
could
capital
sense
C.
the capital C.
Which is an actual line in that book.
Yeah.
Someone says...
Are you serious?
Yes.
Yes. Thomas could sense the capital C in that word. Someone in a line of
He
dialogue
sensed
mentions
a lot of things, especially in the dark. He's like, I could sense the doorway around me as I moved through it. Are you an idiot?
You can just
No, 'cause
say
he
that he
sensed
saw
it.
it, or he felt it.
Or he
You can
bumped into
describe
it would make more sense because you're in the dark and you can't see anything.
Yeah.
And then you conveniently have to be cramped in a tiny hole with Brenda to hide from the cranks. And then suddenly when the crank gets them, everyone can fit in there and move around perfectly fine.
Yes, it doesn't make any sense. That was the one entertaining scene that I found in this book.
Yeah.
That I feel like he actually had fun writing. He was like, oh wait, writing can be interesting? You can actually write an interesting scene?
Yeah.
And then that doesn't last very long, where it's like this fun jump scare moment between Brenda, Thomas, and the zombies.
Yeah.
But man, it's just so meandering. The other time ticking clock element in this book could have been Group A versus Group B. And they race across the desert through this post-apocalyptic landscape, and they have brushes with the other group, and the other group is desperate to kill Thomas because that's part of their prophecy / destiny. Like, apparently Wicked is trying to test these kids, and we can speculate about this, but it doesn't matter because James Dashner doesn't even know why Wicked is doing all this stuff, to find the strongest, smartest kid, right?
We think
We think. Because it never says, like,
the top
any
wins.
reason why they're there, why they're being tested. Like,
No.
it's just to test them
And
in
we
their
also
heads.
don't know how the events during the Scorch Trials actually tests
Like,
anybody.
what are they testing?
Just
Yeah.
surviving?
It would be more interesting if each time they combated with
Yeah.
something, Wicked dropped a parachute full of water and more apples for them, or you know, some sort of like reward to be like, you're on the right track, you solved the correct
Yeah.
equation, you added the correct variable or
Like-
something. But nope, there's none of that.
Yeah.
They're such a big bad, they're not really in the story at all. And one thing they do in the book is save Thomas's life.
Yes, which is really,
Which is so
really stupid
weird.
and falls flat. But some of the tests in this book, like, you could... Okay, here's something else you could watch that's better than The Maze Runner, is Squid Games.
Yeah.
Squid Games is like a game show set in modern times, but it's a bunch of rich people watching poor people play these life or death games for money. There's a theme there. The obstacles are genuinely interesting. Like, I remember the rope pulling competition where it's like the team that pulls the other one across the edge and they die, the team that lives, they go on. There's interesting twists where it's like the main character, his team, he's got women and old men, so how are they going to win? They learn this new technique. Like, I remember all of that.
Yeah.
And the plot is interesting because it's got twists and turns.
Yeah, and the characters have a very strong, specific goal.
Yes, they have a good motivation. Like, the main character has his backstory, he has a daughter, he's poor, he's a gambler, he needs all this money to pay off his debts. There's so much more to that book. Like, that movie. It's a roller coaster. If this book were a roller coaster, it would start at the top and go like, whee, flatten
And then
out.
just stop because there's no...
Yeah, there's no momentum.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
reach the end of the track.
And it's like, sorry, we're going to have maintenance for about 3 hours. Sit still.
Yeah. So the plot, it's kind of like, it should be more like the Squid Games, right? Where it's like you have these specific tests and it's Group A versus Group B and you go through these trials. But at the end of the book, it feels like Dashner kind of changes his mind where he's like, it's not really like a survival of the fittest. It's more like fulfilling a prophecy where Thomas is the true leader. And he was supposed to find Group B at this specific time. And it's for the variables. It's for the patterns. It's for Wicked. He never explains any of that stuff. Like, you get the sense that he's trying to say there are thousands of simulations run with these smart kids.
Yeah.
And Thomas is the chosen one. But we don't know how.
Yeah.
Like, all this stuff that I'm saying is all ambiguous and interpretive.
Yeah, like it's hard doing a mystery and not giving your audience any answers. You
Yeah.
have to give them small piece by small piece by small piece to keep them reading and keep them
one
intrigued.
big mystery, not a few small ones you thought of off the top of your head for
Yes.
fun.
That never get
That
solutions.
never get solutions.
And they sometimes contradict each other.
Yes.
Something like Gideon the Ninth is fantastic because you have a strong foundation with the main character has a believable motivation. The main character is also actually funny, and she strikes the tone of horror and humor perfectly. And James Dashner's tone is horror and cringy, which makes it for a very dour and embarrassing combination.
Yes.
There's a good relationship between the two main characters. Teresa and Thomas, they have zero chemistry.
And barely any interactions.
Their relationship sucks, and that's supposed to be the most important one in the story.
I
Thomas is
sensed a
trying to
capital
save.
S and that sucks.
Yeah.
Well, you would be correct, and you would also be a genius named Thomas Edison. Thomas is supposed to find Teresa, but we don't care about that relationship. So there's nothing to latch onto the story emotionally, even though we don't get any answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the amount of times Thomas is like, I have such a deep connection with Teresa, I feel it. But then Brenda is like, that your girlfriend? He goes,
I don't know.
no, we're just friends.
I actually love both of you. Can I kiss you both at the same time? To look at Gideon the Ninth again, the main goal of Gideon the Ninth is for Hera Hark to become a lictor, and Gideon has to help her. And by the end of that story, at the beginning, you don't know
say
what it means to be a
anything.
lictor. I'm sorry, but you understand that.
Yes.
That's the pitch. Become a lictor, right? It happened in
I've
the
read
first
some
chapter.
of the book, yes.
But there are questions about what that means, and they are answered at the end. That's
Yeah.
spoiler free, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's how books should work.
Yeah.
That's how they should work. Meanwhile, there's an overarching mystery about the character's backstory and the place where Hera Hart comes from that doesn't get answered, that she can explore in the second and third book. That's how it should work. You should have
Yes.
like these umbrella plots. Right?
And give little hints in between.
Yes.
Because in Maze Runner, it's just,
Yeah.
It's one big
I don't
question.
know.
And there's no connection between book 1 and book 2.
No.
No.
You could connect the two easier by having, the grievers make the kids sick.
Yeah.
But you could have a second illness, they don't know where it's coming from, and it is the flare killing
Right.
the kids, and they turn into cranks.
And then-
you could have more of a
Yes.
connection
Yeah.
there.
And that's the mystery that you solve at the end of the second book.
Yes.
Where
Yeah.
it's like, what is the flare?
Oh, we've seen this before.
We've seen this before. We can use the grievers to help us, this thing that we learned about in the first book, to solve this sickness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can still have the umbrella plot, the overarching mystery of who is wicked and what are their aims. You
book 3.
you solve one mystery in that book, but you leave that other bigger mystery unsolved
Yeah.
for the third book.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do that.
Because he doesn't even know what it is.
No. he
Doesn't know the answer, doesn't even know the questions.
Yeah, even if
So
he
there's no-
did, it does not read that way.
No.
It
that
does
was
not.
yes, not at all.
I would be
We could-
shocked if he reread this book and edited it.
Yes.
Shocked.
I would be shocked if he had an outline.
Yep.
Which makes me think that this was a one book deal It did super well. They got a movie sold, and then he's like, you need to write a second book to capitalize on sales now, while this trend is still hot.
Zombies are
And now
more
Walking Dead
popular,
is out,
so go
so-
with that instead of
Yeah.
dystopian.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wouldn't be
what happened.
surprised if we finished this in like 3 weeks.
I wouldn't be surprised if he sat down, did it once, and said bye.
Yeah. Like, how would you even have fun writing a book this bad?
Like, I think he's just stupid.
I don't understand.
Like, even the actual writing, sentences weren't right.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't written right.
No.
Like, grammatically, they were wrong. And there were so many commas in the wrong spots, and sentences started and stopped when they shouldn't have, and it was so clunky to read it.
Yeah.
Like, you never once get sucked in and like, ooh, I'm on a roll reading this because it's so well done and flows so well. It's never like that.
You feel like you're taking the English final and your professor's like, you need to find 25 mistakes in this paragraph, and you're like, I found 30 mistakes.
Yeah. It's just insane to me. And it's infuriating because, I don't know. I feel like I don't hear people talking about how actually bad something like this is when it's like something like Fourth Wing is super popular and polarizing. People say it's a really bad book. Have you read the Scorch Trials?
Yeah.
Like, read an actually bad book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, put aside your emotions.
Yeah.
Put aside your
Like,
preconceived notions.
objectively bad.
Look at it objectively.
Not just bad because it's not your type of book.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. This is an actually bad book.
Yeah.
And it's very instructive and inspiring for a writer like
Yeah.
myself.
Yes. I'm
Because
like,
I'm like,
I can't do better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's at least
redeeming
reassuring.
quality.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one redeeming quality of this terrible book.
It
is that
makes me feel
does-
better.
Makes me feel better
Inspires.
about myself.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one terrible thing about this book.
One.
Another?
Yes, here's something that I had forgotten about. But at the beginning of the Maze Runner, everyone loses their memories. I think amnesia is kind of similar to like time travel, where it's like you have to be careful with how you use it,
Yeah.
because
It's
it can
so
be
easy to get wrong.
yes, and it's really convenient. Like what things the characters forget, like they remember
Yeah.
the word for doctors and medics.
And they remember hypnotist's pendulum,
Yes, but they.
but they can't remember what their name is
Yes.
or who your mom is.
Well, in the first book, actually, I got that mixed up. They can't remember the name for doctors, so they call them medjacks, but they remember the name for butchers. It's like
Yeah.
weird selective memory
Yeah.
stuff.
And then Thomas remembers what a hospital is in the second one, so he has to remember what a doctor
He
is.
remembers what a grocery store is. But at the
so
end of the first book, Thomas, he gets stung by a griever. And when you get attacked by a griever, you get all your memories back. But you get really sick for a couple of days. And then you're fine. And then you don't want to tell anyone what your memories were that you just got back.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. Thomas gets all of his memories back. He's like, I could save the day. I know how to solve the maze. They get out of the maze. Start of the first book, he forgets his memory again.
Yeah.
For no reason. And then he has
just
these
to be
memory
convenient.
dreams.
So bad.
It's just so Thomas can't go, oh, I know why we're here and what we're doing.
I was raised with Wicked. I helped create the tests, whatever.
He does
thing.
remember that, though.
Yeah, he knows he helped.
He remembers that, but he
Yes.
doesn't know why, and he doesn't know how.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really know with who.
Yeah,
It's horrible.
it's bad.
So, should we talk about the betrayal? Or actually, let's talk about the signs. Because halfway through the book,
Oh, yeah.
All around the city.
all around the city, maybe before that we should talk about Brenda, actually, because Brenda's an important character.
Let's talk about Brenda.
Is she, though?
Yeah.
She's supposed to be an important character.
She's introduced as the Gale character / PETA character. She's supposed to be the secondary love interest
Yeah.
for Thomas to choose between Brenda and Teresa. Too bad Thomas has no chemistry or any driving factor to be with Brenda or Teresa, except Brenda has a breath with no scent.
And she's so clean, even though everyone else around here is filthy because we're in a post-apocalyptic land
Her hair
where it's
smells
all
good.
dirt and hot sun and everyone should be sweaty, but she's clean and pretty and her hair is long.
Yes.
And she also keeps trying to hold his hand.
And then she's like, oh, that's just my culture. What?
So there's so many problems with that. We should describe how these characters get introduced.
Right.
So the group is traveling through the desert.
Scorch.
It's
called the
They're
Scorch.
traveling through the Scorch, not the
It's
desert.
not even desert. He says dirt and rocks so many times,
Yeah.
but then says desert.
Yes.
It's Utah desert.
Yeah, it's basically a Utah desert.
Yeah.
So the characters, they survive a lightning storm, and that's one of the obstacles of the trials, by the way. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Wicked
Don't get
was
hit by
testing
lightning.
them to not get hit by lightning. And the
You
guys
gotta run really fast.
who die from lightning, they were too weak to survive.
Well,
so they're not chosen.
Except for
That's not
Minho,
even a
he got
test.
electrocuted, but then was up
But
and
he
walking
was
fine.
fine. Don't
Yes.
Because
worry.
he stopped, dropped, and rolled, everybody. He
And Thomas
stopped,
put
dropped,
dirt on
and
him.
rolled. I mean, like,
Yes, he really did.
Yeah.
That plot happens again and again, by the
Yes.
way. Where it's like this random thing happens, some of the kids die, but it's none of the ones that Thomas really is friends with, so he's not that sad. The characters regroup, and then Thomas meets some strangers, and he tells his friends, you guys wait back here, I need to talk with them.
Alone.
Because that's
it's
easier to write.
Yep.
Oh my god, we're on the same wavelength. Thomas and the group, they just survived this lightning storm. They're holed up in this weird place, and then this guy named Jorge, who's kind of like this crazy dude, this crazy
Who
Hispanic
knows
guy.
stuff conveniently.
Yes, he's like, I'm
Jumps
gonna
down
kill
the
all of you
ceiling.
guys.
Oh wait, my favorite
my
one of my
knife.
favorite lines is when he jumps down the ceiling and he like duck and roll, you know, to like not hurt himself. But
Parkour.
but it says like he turns into a human ball to roll across like
I imagine like
I don't
Sonic
think
the
any of
Hedgehog.
us are assuming he's turning into a bouncy ball.
No,
Like
that's metaphorical writing, Annie.
I hate it.
He's being poetic.
Yeah, he does that so many times. Like
He turned into a
explaining things that
metaphorical
don't need to be
hedgehog ball.
explained. Because we are people and we realize that things just happen. Like
Yeah.
if you just say he duck and rolled.
You
like
can just say that.
like no one Anyway.
Yes.
That's how you meet Jorge.
And Jorge's group of
They're
regular
all
people.
cranks.
They're all cranks.
But
which
they're
is,
all mostly fine.
So what does crank mean?
It just
you've been
means
infected by
literally
the flare.
everyone they meet is a crank.
Because every
Because
normal human
everyone's
being
infected.
by the flare. And there comes a point when you turn into a zombie, apparently. But we don't know when that is or what causes it.
yeah, there's no timeline. There's no symptoms that we can see.
Yeah.
They're less interesting than zombies. And zombies are like one of the least interesting monsters out there.
Yeah.
Zombies at least have rules. And I know we're getting sidetracked. Zombies, how do you kill a zombie?
You cut off its
Cut off its head, crush the brain. What do zombies want?
brains.
Brains, they want brains, and they travel in hordes, right? They
Yes.
have rules,
And they're
Yeah.
slow.
and they're stupid.
They're attracted
And they're
to sound
stupid.
usually.
But the flares have no rules, so we don't know how to kill them. It was the same problem with the grievers. That's why the grievers
Yeah.
aren't that interesting.
Yep.
How do you kill them?
And they squish it.
Thomas
Stab
got
it.
really
Wall.
lucky like 3 times in a row.
Oh, Thomas is a martial artist's genius, by
Yeah,
the way.
but
can use
he
a sword,
never
he
turned
can use
into a
spear.
human ball like Jorge.
No, he never turned into a metaphorical human ball. So Jorge and Brenda travel with the Gladers because Thomas pulls Jorge aside and he's like, hey, I know you're crazy, but we're both cool guys. And Jorge's like, I like you, kid.
Yeah.
Everyone that Thomas meets kisses his butt because
Even
he's a
though
handsome
he's
dude.
so boring and lame.
He has
Hey,
nothing
don't be
going
mean
for
to
him.
James Dashner.
You mean Thomas Edison.
Sorry.
Hey, when you
Actually,
insult
scratch
James
that. We
Dashner-
should be.
I'm
mean to
gonna be
James
mean to
Dashner.
him. All I want forever. No shame, no regrets.
That's why this episode's so much fun.
Because I don't feel bad at all.
Yeah.
I
and
feel great, actually.
Thomas tells Jorge, we're special kids, and we have a cure to the flare. So if you guys help us
Somewhere.
get to the end, then we'll give you the cure.
Yeah.
And he's like, wow, he actually believed me.
Just believable enough. Persuasion check, right? Roll your dice. I rolled a nat 20.
Yep.
He just has weighted dice.
Yeah, they're weighted.
Yes. Thomas returns with Jorge back to the group,
And Brenda's the most prettiest post-apocalyptic warrior princess.
Wow, I hope that's Brenda. She's hot.
I use degree body spray.
Yeah.
She conveniently has deodorant
She's
in the
the only one.
apocalypse.
But she doesn't show Thomas because Thomas doesn't want to know that, like, her beauty is artificial. Like, she's a natural beauty.
Yeah.
That's why her breath naturally doesn't stink.
Yeah.
And,
And
he
the
finds that
first-
so attractive.
The first thing she does when she meets Thomas, you'll never guess. She kisses him on the cheek and says, "I like you."
That's
You
actually
don't
what happened.
Know him.
Okay, not only
He's a
would that
sweaty teenage boy, and everyone calls him ugly. All of his friends are like, "You're ugly as hell, dude.
And you're stupid and annoying.
And
You're not funny."
And seconds ago, and Thomas, he blushed and he's like, wow, she's so pretty, she likes me. Seconds ago, like, he just talked about how Minho's his best friend and he almost lost him.
she had her knife against
To
his
his
best friend's
throat.
throat.
Yep.
She turned around, walks up to Thomas, goes like, "You should be the leader instead of Minho," and then kisses him on the cheek.
And he's like, "Whoa!" Oh my gosh, it's so bad. Brenda is
awful.
the worst example of a well-written character because she is so she changes so much, and like with no, like you don't know her enough to see if a character changes that.
It happens randomly.
Yeah.
Her motivation
explain
shifts and personality behavior shifts erratically.
Yeah.
And you could do that if you knew the character well and like you understood, oh, they're changed because this happened, and it would make sense with why they're upset or like they're acting
Or
different.
you know where their baseline is,
Yeah.
and that's how you can describe the erratic
But we
behavior.
had just met her, and she's holding a knife to someone, and she kisses Thomas, and then they're alone, and
then
she's
she holds
feeling him
hands,
up,
and then-
puts her hand on his chest so many times, and Thomas is like, oh, this is nice, but also stop.
And he's like, I can't. I gotta think about Teresa, who just told me to go die, basically.
She's gonna betray
but
me,
There's
but she's so
history
pretty.
there.
She loves me. He feels like guilty, even though like Teresa's basically not his girlfriend or whatever.
No, they kiss once,
Yes,
and it was a ruse.
apparently.
But he doesn't know because he's a stupid teenage boy.
Yes.
Everything's
So-
It's so easy to trick him.
Yes, it is. There's a similar. He writes almost all of his characters the same way, but it's especially egregious with women, where it's like they just immediately fall in love with Thomas and think he's
Yeah.
amazing for no reason. Teresa was the exact same way.
Yeah.
Earlier in the book, like before they meet Jorge and Brenda, he and the group meets Teresa, and she's just standing in the desert alone, and it's supposed
Next
to be
to
this
a
mysterious
shack.
thing. And Thomas is like, "You guys wait back here. I need to go talk to my girl. I need to talk to my e-girlfriend. I need to talk to my Discord kitten." And then she says,
Thomas, I hate you. I can't talk to you. She acts brainwashed. And then he says, what's going on, babe? And then she walks up to him, kisses him on the lips, pushes him away, and then says, go. I'm saving you from a dangerous thing.
You have to run! And then
Thomas
he does.
is like, "Ah."
and then he starts crying and runs away. He runs past all of his friends. His friends are like,
And just
"What
keeps going.
happened?"
Keeps going for hours and hours, and then
can
Mino
imagine.
catches up to him. He's like, "What is your
And
problem?"
he said, "I'm sorry. I just had a traumatic moment."
Sorry, my girlfriend just broke up with me, I think. But also she kissed me, but I can't tell what's going on.
But I think I'm more upset that she kissed me instead of Newt, but I don't know if I'm ready to handle that yet.
Yeah.
But also, Newt isn't in the book at all.
No.
Why would you have Newt or Mino in the book at all if
They
you're not
mean
going to
nothing
write
in the
anything
story.
about them?
It's
Yeah.
bad. Well, they get
Because you get
separated,
separated
and
every single second of every single moment of the book.
it's bad.
What Thomas should do in that moment is like, he's been looking for Teresa this whole time. Teresa's there. She tells him, go away. Something bad is going to happen.
he should say, no, I'm staying with you. And then something bad to him happens.
Yeah.
Because if you really love someone, you'd stay.
But he doesn't. His motivations make zero sense.
No, it's bad.
It's just conveniently, oh, he would do this because it would be easier for me to write.
Yes.
Which is a very
Common theme.
common theme throughout this whole book.
So there is so much bad stuff that happened to this book. We're obviously just keep on getting on these tangents because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, there's also this horrible, astounding thing.
Yeah.
But if Thomas made that mistake where he's like, I'm going to stay with Teresa, and then something bad happens, like he denies this prophecy thing that he's supposed to live out with,
Yeah.
with the wicked, then you could start his character arc where it's like, okay, in book one, he became a leader, he became a runner, right? Whatever. As bad and as clumsy as it was, it's at least there, kind of, on the surface. The second book, what should it be about? Okay, how are you a good leader?
Yeah.
So, like, Spider-Man is a good example of this, right? It's the most famous origin story ever. He becomes Spider-Man, and then he goes to this fighting ring, and he lets someone steal some money. Even though he could have stopped him, he doesn't do it. He's like,
Yeah.
whatever, I don't care. And then
Not
Uncle
my
Ben
job.
dies. Spoiler alert! And that's the mistake that Spider-Man makes that kicks him off on this journey to
Great
defeat the
power
Green
comes
Goblin.
great responsibility.
That's where that
Uh-huh.
phrase comes from.
Yeah.
And it's great.
And everyone knows it.
It would have been great if both Thomas and Minho's tags said the leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make them
I
fight.
mean, come on.
Make them go against each other and not just, oh, you take it because I don't want to deal
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Just, like, give some more internal conflict.
Give any.
Yeah.
Any conflict that isn't just conveniently a zombie shows up. For a zombie book, there really aren't that many zombies in it.
No, there aren't.
And when there are, they just run away.
Yeah. They just run away from the zombies.
Yeah, like
it's like
Mino
so easy to
says-
kill them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a couple cranks over there, but we got past them fine. Isn't that the biggest thing in this book supposed to be cranks?
It's supposed to be about running away from zombies. Yeah.
I hate this book so deeply.
It's just pathetic.
Bad. It's so bad.
And then there's a new kind of creature at the very end
Oh,
That
yeah.
he brings out of nowhere.
with light bulbs on it. I
still don't understand what those were supposed to be.
I feel like it would have been so much better if they were actually grievers, because they're thinking the whole time like, oh, that's where grievers live.
Yes.
There's probably grievers in there, and then they don't come out.
Yes. So we should explain, at the end of the book, the two groups get together, the boys and the girls. They're like, wait a second, we shouldn't fill out this prophecy. We shouldn't be killing Thomas, because we didn't really want to kill Thomas anyway. That's what Teresa wanted to do, but she's crazy. We don't like her. And they reach the safe zone just in time, and there's these weird pods.
And the safe zone...
4 minutes.
The safe zone is a stick in the ground with a little banner on it that says "Safe Zone."
It's just like
There's no building; it's just desert.
It's the perfect example of what this book is like, where it's like
he
build up,
couldn't
build up,
even
build up,
think
and
of
then
something.
the satisfying resolution is just a stick in the ground.
Yeah,
Literally.
a stick in the ground.
And inside these
things
weird pods,
flip in the dirt, and then pods come up.
yes, and out of the pods come these weird new creatures. They're
They're
not
like-
grievers, they're not cranks or zombies.
They're kind of
They're weird light
something.
bulbs.
Humanoid, fleshy, with light
bulbs all over them.
And I guess this is the last test of the Scorch Trials, right?
You have to kill the monsters.
Yeah, and
then
there's
Thomas
a
gets a
thunderstorm rolling
sword.
in, too.
Yeah, Thomas has a really long knife, almost like a sword.
But where does he get it from?
From Teresa, and he says
She's just like
he doesn't know where she keeps pulling weapons out of, but she also has a spear and a dagger now.
and also she's wearing a desert dress, so
Yeah,
who knows
and
where
she
that
looks
comes from.
so beautiful and lovely and clean, and
More
her breath
beautiful
smells
than
It
great.
also has non-scented breath.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then they fight these monsters even though they're starving, and
there's
they've been
lightning
starving
again.
for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There's lightning as
Yeah.
well. And they have to run away from the lightning back into the pods from the monster that they just killed. It's just so random.
It's weird.
It's insane.
I can't believe that it exists and people read it.
And they think it's good.
Yeah.
Very briefly, there is a moment at the 3/4 mark of the book where Thomas and Brenda, they get split up from the rest of the group because of some earthquake. Minho and Newt and the boys and Jorge, they survive the zombie apocalypse, I guess, and they meet up later. But Brenda and Thomas are alone together. And there is so many weird, uncomfortable, close scenes with the two of them together. But they finally... They run into some zombies underground, and they go above ground because they're like, there are fewer zombies up here, but there are still crazy people.
Even though they went underground to get away from the zombies in the
Yes.
first place.
And there's a sign, a plaque that says, "From Wicked, Thomas is the true leader."
A weird random plaque, a weird mysterious random thing again out
Yeah.
of nowhere. And they have no idea what it means. And Thomas is like, oh, that means me? And Brenda says, yeah, I knew these signs existed, but I don't want to tell you because I don't want to freak you out.
And they're all over the city.
Yes. It just-
Everybody's been looking for Thomas.
someone named Thomas.
Yeah.
No one has said, "Hey, I'm Thomas."
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
Brenda's
'cause
like,
you could be like, I'm Thomas, I'm the leader, listen to me.
yeah, Brenda's
Yeah.
like, Thomas, this is so surprising. Guy I'm traveling with named Thomas. And then they get abducted, and these guys are like, you're Thomas. And he's like, uh-huh. And they're like, it's him.
It's him. We need to question him. And you know what they ask him?
Nothing.
Where did you come from?
What's your name?
And then Minho and Newt
There's
freeze.
no
And
reason they
he's
do
like,
it.
sorry, I can't talk. I'm looking at this other lady who's not named, and I literally can't look up.
But her boobs are great.
She's got great ballistics.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. Oh my gosh. And the way that he explains, like he's taped down to a chair when they kidnap him.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's something sticky on my hands, like tape.
Maybe it's tape.
Maybe it's tape. Just say my hands are stuck to the chair.
Yeah. And this group of people that captures him, it's just like every other character that they meet along their way. It's just some random post-apocalyptic survivors. They play
Yeah.
no greater role in
And
the
all
story.
get drugged.
all they ask is, who are you, where'd you come from? The amount of times Thomas explains the story of where he came from is maybe 4.
Yes.
And every
And
single
that's a
time they're
lot
like,
for a
they're
bad
like,
book.
this would be too crazy to make up. You must be telling 100%
Yeah.
the truth. And now I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Let's help Thomas because
Yeah.
he's the truth. The sign says he's the true leader. We have,
You have to
follow him.
believe him.
It's crazy to me. Also, everyone in this place, this city, blames Wicked for all their problems. They're like, we believe they have the cure for the
Because
flare,
Wicked
but they're not
sent
giving it
them
to us.
there.
So there's this sign. There are signs all over the city that say
Wicked on it, big bold letters. Thomas is in charge. They find Thomas and they're like, who are you?
Okay.
Instead of, let's kill him because
Right.
he's the leader of Wicked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane to me.
Yeah. Like, there's so many easy things that James Dashner could have done to make it a little more interesting.
But he doesn't.
Like that.
Yeah.
But he didn't. Because
No.
he didn't think of it because he's stupid.
Yeah. We are basically speed running through the end of this book.
Yeah.
But there is one other thing that I do want to mention, a plot hole. Like an actual legitimate plot hole spotted from a million miles away. And it's when Thomas and his group are reunited after they're captured by these cranks and interrogated. What's your name? They meet the girls, and Teresa says, and the girls are all armed, and they're like really close to making it to the safe zone, and they're like, we need to take Thomas because we need to kill him because it's part of the prophecy or whatever. They capture Thomas. Thomas is like, don't worry, guys. I got this. I'll charm them with my looks. The girls, they interrogate Thomas. They say, where did you come from? And he explains the exact same story that he just told the cranks that captured him earlier.
Yeah, he says the same thing 12 times. He said it to Jorge, too, when he met him.
Yes. And he says, listen, you shouldn't kill me because you'd feel really guilty about it.
And they're like,
You know what? We didn't really
You're
think about
right.
it. Teresa's the one that really wanted to kill you. And
Yeah.
even though at the beginning of the book, Thomas read this sign that said, Teresa, big bold letters.
The betrayer.
He's like, she's betraying me?
What?
That's crazy.
He's so stupid.
it's so bad.
He actually believes eventually that she truly betrayed him, that she's not playing a role. Even though she tells him telepathically, hey, something bad's gonna happen, don't worry, trust me. I'm just playing a part.
But then it's so bad that he has to believe she actually betrayed him.
Yes.
But really, it wasn't that bad.
He's doing his best to be meta
Shoved her
about
into a
it.
box.
Yeah, but it
And
does
it's
not
just
work.
that.
So Thomas convinces this group of girls not to kill him. Teresa gets really pissed off. They keep traveling towards the safe zone. And then eventually they're walking through this like dead wooded area, and Teresa's hiding in the tree. She's like,
Hey.
come with me. And Thomas is like, okay. So he walks away. None of the other girls notice. The entire group keeps walking. And then we get this big exposition dump where it's like Teresa's there, Aris is there. Eris, who's like the mirror of Teresa.
Yeah.
He's the girls group
Yeah.
version of Teresa.
And they kiss.
Eris,
Eris and Teresa.
to make the betrayal feel real.
They're like, she's like, I've been with Eris the whole time. We tricked you.
Yeah.
We tricked you
Cheated on
again.
you, even though we weren't
Double
dating,
take.
maybe, but
Also,
we kind of were.
I hate Brenda. My
There's a
icy
real love
stare.
triangle.
My icy stare is for Brenda and Brenda alone, Thomas.
Yeah. So they betray Thomas. They say, we're going to kill you now. Walk through this door. And he walks through a door.
A random
like,
glowing door, like a freezer, which he conveniently remembers.
yeah, there's a weird building in the middle of nowhere. He walks through it. They spray some gas on it. He walks out and he's like, you hurt my feelings.
And conveniently, his headache is gone.
And then after
Yeah,
he
he's
walks
like,
through the doorway.
that gas, I don't know what it was, but boy do I feel great now.
And
Maybe
I'm not even
cure the
hungry
flare?
anymore.
yeah.
Maybe that's the cure for the flare, and
Everyone
everyone else
should
could
know
just
they're
walk
there.
through that, and they're like, all our problems are solved. And then once he walks through that doorway, Teresa's like, oh, you did it, you
so
passed the test. I
sorry."
was supposed to do that. I still love you.
And she's crying and apologizing, and
Thomas
he's like,
is like,
ugh,
He never
you
forgets it.
betrayed me.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
But then he conveniently
Bad.
forgets that he's mad at her when they get saved and they hug.
At the end of the story.
No, there's a moment where they kiss again, and he's like, he felt nothing.
Oh, right.
This
Yes.
time.
He does feel stilted by her.
Ugh, these women keep kissing me. Ugh.
Yeah. But the plot hole is that Thomas and Teresa are like the two most important main characters. The girl group just keeps walking and meets up with the boys later. And Thomas and Teresa are like, we're just following him. When the girls group meets the boys would be like, where's Thomas?
Yeah.
And they would be like, we don't know. They disappeared, and so did Teresa. And Teresa's
Also,
the one that
Eris
always
showed
wanted
up.
to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eris does not matter in this book at all.
He's just there.
He can also tell. They can also telepathically communicate with Eris.
God. There are so, like we said, there's so many bad things in this book. We can't even cover all of them.
Yeah,
No.
and just keep jumping to everything because it's impossible to talk about this book in a smart way because it's so stupid.
Yeah. But the two groups meet up, and the boys would be like, where's Thomas? And the girls would say, he disappeared with Teresa, and Teresa wanted to kill him. In fact, we should have turned around like 200 kilometers earlier
Yeah.
and like looked for both of them, but we didn't.
No, we didn't
Like-
even look back once.
None of it is thought out.
Didn't even
So
not
bad.
hear his footsteps
That's so
anymore.
bad.
Yeah. There's so much bad stuff. At the very end of the story, they kill these light bulb creatures. And Jorge and Brenda and the rest of the Gladers, including the girl group, are rescued by Wicked.
By a big
helicopter
Berg. A
right?
berg. That's what they're called.
some kind of helicopter thing.
Yeah.
And there's a soldier on board, just one soldier, and he captures Brenda and Jorge, and he's like, "Who are these two?" And Thomas says, "They're my friends."
Wait,
that
Let me tell you about my story.
Let me tell you where I came from.
Let me tell you my backstory, which is fragmented because I have amnesia.
And you know
conveniently.
better than I do because you've been watching us this entire time.
And he's like, "Okay, you can keep one. I'm gonna count to 3." And Thomas is like, "I figured out the whole thing. I'll tell him to kill one because they want me to choose one to kill.
And then
That's
they'll
the
kill
test.
the other one.
And then they'll kill the other one." So he says, "Kill Brenda."
Brenda.
And the soldier's like, "You passed my test. You're the smartest boy in the
No,
world."
he grabs Brenda and like pulls her over to the opening, which the Berg has taken off but conveniently not closed.
Like he's
the
gonna
thing.
throw her off
Like
the-
he's gonna throw her off the thing, and Thomas tackles him and takes his gun.
Ah, okay, that's right.
And then he's like, "Okay."
The soldier gives up.
soldier's like, "All right."
You passed the
Cool.
test. You stood up for your friend. That's the theme of the book. Stand up for your friends.
The theme of the book is don't read this book.
Yeah. And that's a great way to end.
Yeah. I'm
There's
just as confused as I was when we started.
Yeah.
I'm even more confused.
So am I.
Well, Tanner, Annie, is this your favorite book?
Yep.
You liar.
No, that was a test.
Capital-
Wicked wanted me to say yes, even though I didn't want to.
This was my least favorite book. Does that count?
Yeah.
This is the worst book I've ever read.
Easily the worst book
So I'm
I've ever
assuming
read.
none of us would recommend it either.
No.
Well, I would recommend it if you want to read like a good bad book.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's
It's
a good
hilarious
point.
for that reason.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's funny.
It's
I told
very
Annie,
funny.
I was like, at least it's
It
entertaining.
is entertaining.
Yeah.
I'll
Because
give it
it's so
that.
horrible.
But not in a good way.
No.
So if you're the kind of person who watches bad movies because you enjoy watching bad movies, maybe this book is for you.
Yeah. But if you love the Scorch Trials, especially when you're younger and you want something better, like read our other book recommendations and then come back and you'll see just how horrible it really
Yeah,
is.
don't
Or
reread
just
it.
watch the movies because they're fun.
Yeah.
And they fix a lot of the things, even though a lot of the things are still broken.
But they're at least entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Newt's in it more, and he's obviously the best character.
True. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for watching.
Yeah.
Please subscribe, leave a comment and a like.
Yeah, please let us know your opinions of the Scorch Trials. I'm dying of curiosity to see if
anyone
anybody else
likes it.
hated it as much as we did.
If you genuinely liked it, please let me know so I can
Disagree with you.
disagree with you.
Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye!